I'm always searching for, what's going to take me that extra step? What is going to show me something new about myself? What is going to make me just a little bit stronger? That's what I'm looking for.
Hello, and welcome back to Seek the Joy podcast. Happy Seek the Joy Tuesday. I'm your host, Sydney Weiss, and today we're going all the way back to October 2018 to share probably one of my favorite episodes of all time. Like, it's an original OG old school Seek the Joy episode with Mirna Valerio, also known as the Mirnavator. Mirna is an ultramarathon runner, full-time adventurer, author, former educator, mom. She's just so kind, full of love and joy, and just an all-around inspiration. And I had the best time connecting with her 3 years ago. I cannot believe it's been that long. Mirna is just a force of nature, and I'm just so excited to share this episode with you again because her story, her voice, and her mission of empowerment and body positivity and adventure is always so timely, and I just know you're going to love it. So in this episode, we chat all about Mirna's love for running and adventure and why curiosity is an essential part of our growth. She shares with us this epic race that she had just completed at the time, the Transrockies Run. It's a 6-day stage race covering 120 miles across the Colorado Rockies. And we talk about how perseverance, spirit, and community really lifted her up and pushed her to the finish line. Mirna then opens up about living her life publicly and how being vulnerable has inspired others to push outside of their comfort zones too and also choose adventure. We also chat about redefining athleticism, the inspiration behind her blog, Fat Girl Running, the REI Documentary, and her book, A Beautiful Work in Progress. Mirna shares with us how she deals with negative comments online and why it's so important to embrace the body that we're in, the challenges that she's taken on next. And again, this was 3 years ago, so much I know in her life has changed and just blossomed, but there's so much good stuff in this episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. One of the reasons why I do this podcast is because I really want you to be able to live a happier, more joyful, and just ease-filled life. And so that's why I'm so happy to share that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. The last year and a half, there is no doubt it's been difficult. And that's why I think now more than ever, it's important that we have reliable resources that we can turn to. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. So this is how it works. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's easy and free to change counselors if you don't think the person you're matched with is a good fit. And this service is available for people worldwide too. BetterHelp also offers a broad range of expertise in their counselor network, so you'll get timely and thoughtful responses, and you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions too. So, as a listener of Seek the Joy podcast, you will get 10% off your first month by going to BetterHelp.com/seekthejoy. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/seekthejoy. The link will also be included in our show notes. There's so much that I loved about this episode with Mirna, but her words on fear and failure and why it's been so important for her to show people that they can have fear and you can fail, but you can still keep living and going and trying new things. I just think it's always an important reminder. And I think especially right now, as so many of us are still in such a limbo state with COVID, it's the encouragement that we need to keep moving forward and reflect on where we are and be curious. And so it's such a wonderful conversation. Mirna, thank you again for this one. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think about today's new episode, so make sure to join the conversation on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere, and I have just been honestly so appreciative of the feedback from so many of you who are tuning back into these episodes after you heard them like 3 years ago or 2 years ago or earlier this year. So thank you for that. It's been so necessary for me to hit pause right now and just refresh and relax a little bit for the first time in 4 years of doing the podcast. I've never taken a break from sharing new episodes. So I am just so grateful that you're here and that you're tuning in. And I just know you're going to get so many good nuggets of wisdom. So without further ado, Let's dive into this one, choosing a life of adventure, redefining athleticism, and embracing the body we're in with Mirna Valerio, aka the Mirnavator.
So thank you, first of all, Sydney, for having me on your show. I always feel like it's an honor. I mean, it is an honor to share my story with different communities. So I really appreciate that. I can introduce myself like a math professor of mine once did. He runs into the room and he goes, serendipity.
Did he really do that? That's amazing.
Yeah. I was a freshman in college and he just runs in and goes, serendipity, and does a twirl and a flourish. And if I could introduce myself that way, that would be great. But actually, well, my life has been one serendipitous event after another. But anyway, my name is Mirna Valerio, also known as the Mirnavator. And I am, as you said, an ultramarathoner. I consider myself a professional full-time adventurer now. I am a writer. I wrote a book called A Beautiful Work in Progress that is almost a year old in publication date.
Wow.
And I am an ex-teacher, a former teacher. I just left my teaching job my teaching career of 18 years a few months ago. Yeah. I am probably leaving some stuff out. I'm a mom. 15-year-old teenage boy who is currently in boarding school right now. And I know I left something out, but we can get to that.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things, right, where you do so much and you wear so many hats. So I think it's hard to introduce ourselves, right? Or it's hard to cover everything. But I don't even know where to start considering you wear so many hats. But where did this love for ultra marathons and ultra running and these extraordinary long distances, where did they really begin?
Well, I've always been a runner since high school. I ran during field hockey and lacrosse seasons and throughout the year, actually, to get better at both of those sports. And by default, I fell in love with running. And so except for a 4-year long period where I didn't do anything physical. Yeah. When I lived down in Maryland and my first year that I lived in New Jersey, I have always run. And so when I had this health scare in 2008, that prompted me to start running again because that was after the 4-year hiatus. Yeah. And I started out with 5Ks again because I had done 5Ks and 10Ks before. So I had to start out slowly with a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. And, that sounds very logical, but it took a very long time to get to a point where I was running 5Ks and then running half marathons and marathons. So just so no one thinks that one day I was running a 5K and the next day I decided I wanted to run a half marathon. Yeah. It wasn't like it built up very slowly. And so back in 2011, I did my first full marathon, and that was the Marine Corps Marathon. I love the training. It was the year that I started my blog because I kind of wanted to not only chronicle my training, but I wanted to share with people stories that I had about running long distances in my body, which is a plus size body. And I took it from there. After my first marathon, even though I was in a lot of pain, I was like, well, I have to do this again because I want to get better. I want to have a better time. I want to feel better. I want to recover better. And so I signed up for a bunch of marathons. 2013, I did my first ultra. And that was because I already had some curiosity about running distances longer than 26.2 miles. But when I finished my first trail marathon, I had already done, I think, 3 road marathons at this point, 2 or 3. And the race director, who was a friend, at the end, when he's putting my medal on me from finishing my trail marathon, doesn't really say congratulations. He says, next year, 50K, right?
Wow. No pressure, right?
I just want to go sit down and hang with my family, recover a little bit, and
right.
and drink my Gatorade. And this one's like 50K next year. So, but that planted a seed and I did it. Like the next year, you know, as soon as registration appeared, I signed up for the 50K and I did it. Loved the training. I loved having to seek out trails to run to get my training in. I love being outside for hours and hours at a time because I am a slow runner. And it just became part of my lifestyle, finding these ultramarathons and marathons and, you know, just super long distance events and testing my body, testing my mind, seeing what I can do, seeing how far I could push myself. And so that's, you know, that was the genesis of the Mirnavator, the ultramarathoner. You know?
Yeah.
So just one day I'm going to do an ultramarathon.
Yeah. I love how it was really one day you just were like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep chasing this because I love the way it makes me feel. And what you touched on with just that level of curiosity of, well, what would it be like to push my body further or farther? Or I think that's an amazing mindset, and not too many people, I don't know if we think that way. I think we're like, oh my God, a 50K, like that just sounds intimidating, but you really have such a different and positive and I guess you could say growth mindset around all of it.
Yeah, you know, that's a very teacherly term.
Which is perfect.
I definitely have a growth mindset. I have always been extremely curious. And it's funny because my mom is with me on vacation and she's listening right now. I've always been super curious, you know, sometimes to the chagrin of my mom, you know, just in terms of my own personal safety and, you know, I'm always like looking over cliff edges and things like that. And just going into like trails that I randomly find in different countries. Yeah. And, you know, because I always have this curiosity, and I think that is an essential part of adventure. I think it's an essential part of keeping life interesting and, you know, always having different goals in my head, whether they're physical goals, intellectual goals, social goals, whatever kind of goals I have. It definitely needs an element of curiosity. I'm like, what's next, or what's around this bend, or, you know,
yeah.
Or, you know, what's in that dark cave?
Which for a lot of us would be, oh, I'm not going in that dark cave. Like I'm afraid of what's next, or I have fear centered around it. But it almost sounds like you live with no fear.
Oh, I have a lot of fear.
So don't get it twisted. I have fear.
I have so much fear. But sometimes you just have to, you acknowledge the fear and you have it, but you go into a situation with that fear and just keep acknowledging that you have it and work through it. And, you know, I do have a fear of dark spaces, but I'll just, you know, but the curiosity in me is greater. A lot of times is greater than that actual fear. And so even though the fear is ever present, I will continue walking towards the darkness, looking in, being careful, looking in, and you know, and little by little becoming a little bit more comfortable with having that fear present. And it's, you know, again, it's always there. But I think, you know, people deal with fear differently. Some people allow it to block them. Some people fully embrace it and they allow it to kind of pump up their adrenaline.
Yeah. So it's about whether or not it paralyzes you or it motivates you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've definitely been in situations where I have definitely been, you know, had that fear paralyze me. But I'll give you an example. One time I was doing testing for one of the events that I really love to do, which is Tough Mudder. And it's an obstacle course event, not a race. And I was doing testing somewhere in Pennsylvania, and they had this obstacle that someone had designed that was, I want to say 30 feet off the ground. And it was just jumping off of a ledge onto this inflated thing below. And there was that was the obstacle. And there wasn't anything that I had to grab onto or that I had to climb. I mean, I had to climb up to get to that ledge, and I love climbing things, climbing on things, climbing up things, and I don't have a fear of heights, but what I do have is a fear of jumping off ledges.
Yeah.
And roll. And because I always like to be in control of the situation.
Which I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it took me a long time to be able to jump off that ledge. There were lots of people cheering for me. I knew that I'd be safe because nobody had died doing it. All the people that had gone before me, and I was last.
Yeah.
And because I waited until last, I said, just looking for a way to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
And I kept going to the edge and walking back, going to the edge and walking back. And it was really, and then just to kind of see that in real time, because I saw it on video, I was like, wow. Looking at the obstacle, it didn't seem so high, but like looking from above, it seemed like, 100 feet.
It was massive. Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually I said, okay, I have this fear. I'm going to be scared the entire time that I'm doing this. And so I just went without thinking and just dropped off the ledge. It took a good 10 minutes, which is a long time when people are watching and cheering and people are trying to sort of talk you through it. But I did it. And I don't even remember falling.
It's almost like you blacked out.
Yeah. And then I, hit the inflatable thing down below, and I was fine. But I did say I'm not going to do that again because I didn't like the feeling of being that afraid. Yeah. But I did it, and it was over.
I love this story because it's all about perspective, right? So when you're in it, it looks huge. It looks like, oh my God, like what the hell did I get myself into? And then when you're watching it back, or you're watching it when you're removed from the situation, it doesn't look, like a big deal at all. And I think that's such an important message just on a bigger, grander scale, is when it comes to fear, when it comes to obstacles in our lives, when you're in it, it's going to look bigger. But it's about how can we bring it down to scale? How can we bring it down to size? So we go ahead and we do the thing anyway, even though we're scared crapless, Even
though it's overwhelming. And even, it's very hard to have that kind of perspective when you're up in it. When you're in the middle of something. And sometimes you just have to trust that things are going to be okay. Yeah. Use precedent. As I said, nobody died jumping off that ledge.
So you're not going to be the first one.
Exactly. So I probably won't die either. Sometimes you do just have to, you trust yourself, trust your instinct, know that what you're feeling is actually fear, because sometimes you don't know. Yeah. And then just do it. And there are other situations that call for completely thinking through a situation, but that wasn't one of them. Sometimes, as you said, it looks huge and overwhelming, and it looks just so big and imposing. And then, and from your perspective, it is, and you have to acknowledge that is your perspective, but you deal with that and you say, okay, well, this is really scary. I don't want to do it. I'm about to vomit, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if I vomit, it'll be midair, which will be really cool for TV. And,
Oh, man. But you got to do it anyway, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say that this curiosity and this, really love for challenging yourself, is this what motivates you?
It definitely is one of the things that motivates me. There are other things that motivate me, and it's just a pure love of sport, pure love of running, of trails, of being outdoors, of mountains, but definitely challenging myself. I'm right now I'm thinking, what's my next challenge going to be? Because I just finished up a pretty epic race, and it was the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm doing it again next year because I want that challenge again. And I want to challenge myself in new ways on that same course. But I'm always searching for, what's going to take me that extra step? What is going to show me something new about myself? What is going to make me just a little bit stronger? That's what I'm looking for. And also, again, as I said, I just want to be outside as much as possible. want to be out in dirt. I want to be in the trees. I want to be on top of mountains. But it takes work to get there. And it takes, a lot of physical stress,
Totally.
mental stress to get to the tops of those mountains. But I love it because I've worked for that. I've gotten to the top of the mountain with my own two legs. I have done this distance with my own two legs, and it just makes me feel so human. It makes me feel like I could do anything.
What a beautiful metaphor for life. Just this journey that you've been on in these mountains and these races. And for context, so people kind of know, what race or what challenge did you just complete?
Oh yeah. Oh, just a little thing.
Just no biggie. No biggie.
It's called the Transrockies 6-day stage race.
Wow. And
it is a 120-mile 6-day race across the Colorado Rockies. With, averaging about 20 miles a day, but some days are 14 miles, some days are 24 miles or 25 miles. And you start at an altitude at about 8,000 feet, and you're running anywhere from 8,000 to 12,500 feet. So that's a challenge in itself. And the total elevation gain over the week is 20,000 feet, which for some people that's not a lot. For me,
yeah,
it seemed insurmountable.
Yeah, I remember one time where I think I was in Denver, and the elevation is just so different than in Los Angeles, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much. I can't even imagine. That is incredible. You are incredible. That's a 6-day. That's a 6-day race, a 6-day course. That's incredible.
6-day race, yeah. I tried it last year. I made an attempt at it last year, and I only finished 2 stages. I started every day. I got a total of about 75 miles last year and 14,250 feet of elevation gain, but who's counting? And I swore to myself that I would come back again this year. And things happened this year. Awesome things happened this year, where I wasn't really able to train the way I did last year. And but I changed my training. I had a coach, and it was pretty tough on me in a really good way. And I actually went out to Idaho to train with him, and in his mountains over there. And I spent 3 weeks out west at altitude before the race, and that changed everything.
Yeah.
I also, and I think this is probably the most important aspect of my completion of Transrockies this year, I did not do it by myself. I went in thinking, if I finish 3 stages this year, I'll be happy. And I would have been completely happy and satisfied that I finished 3 stages. 1 more stage than last year. I'll come back next year. Next year's my year.
Yeah.
The Transrockies community was not having it. I finished the first day because I finished the first day last year, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Great. At the second day of the race, which is it's 14 miles, but it is one of the toughest days of the race. It's up and over Hope Pass near Leadville, Colorado, which is 12,500 feet. And that's second day in. First day you start at 8,000. And I think you end at 9, or maybe it's 8,000. You go up to 10 maybe and come back down. And second day is Leadville, and it's, there's no air up there.
Wow.
But I was already 2 hours ahead of where I was last year. And I finished, and one of the medic who had suggested that I pull last year from this particular stage was there to greet me. And he said, you are going to finish this stage. And I looked at him, I said, I am. And then I get down to one of the aid stations, and one of the volunteers, Laurel, who I love, says, I'm going to run in the last 5 miles with you because you're going to finish. And I said, all right. And that's how it was every single day. The third day was another day that I didn't finish last year because I had stomach issues because I had altitude sickness. And this year I didn't deal with any of that. Thank goodness. And third day, and I had the sweeps. I was always in the back with the sweepers, the people that that make sure everybody's okay at the end. And I always make best friends with them because I'm always at the end. And they ensured every single day that I finished. They said, well, you're going to finish, at the last mile. They're like, you know what? If you walk it, it's going to hurt. If you run it, it's going to hurt. So let's run it,
Wow.
And so they were coaching me in the back. I had people sending me messages while I'm doing the whole thing. And, and I had some really, really tough days and really tough moments out there, tough emotional moments, tough physical moments. But really, in addition to my own sort of perseverance and spirit and whatnot, it was definitely the community that lifted me up and made sure that I finished every single day. So that's how I finished Transrockies this year.
Talk about the power of community, but also just the power of your own inner will. And that is an incredible just journey and story and race. And what was it like for you when you were running that to experience that level of community and know that it also has a lot to do with who you are, right? And your kindness and the willingness that you've had to share your journey and share your story. And I guess obviously, really put yourself out there, in that way.
While I was doing that race, I would have alternating thoughts.
Right.
Some were like, oh my God, the pressure, so much pressure to finish. I just want to have a good time.
Yeah.
I just have great views. And if I don't finish, I don't finish, And then the other part of me was, wow, look at these people who, most of whom I don't even know personally. Look at them rooting for me. Holy crap, this is so amazing. And the love that I felt in those moments was so overwhelming. And I said, well, I'm going to do this for myself, but I'm also going to give back and do it for them, And I know some people might have an issue with me saying, doing stuff for other people, but like, I knew that my body could do it. So why not?
Right.
And why not sort of pay it forward and give that love back and showing them that their love and support and energy for me and they're taking care of me at the end of a stage. And I would sit down like exasperated and I'd have, they learned what I like to have after a race or after a really long day. They would shove some ginger ale in my face, some plain water and some watermelon and Tums. And every day they were there. So they didn't have to ask me what I wanted. They just knew. And that was really incredible. And really just, again, the love and respect that I felt from them, that made me want to continue and finish strong, even if I was the last finisher 5 out of the 6 days. They didn't care. Yeah. They just cared that I finished and that I proved really to myself that I could finish. And so not everybody has a community like that. I mean, again, these are mostly people that I don't know or that I had just met at the race, And I feel very, very fortunate, and I felt very fortunate in those moments, even when I had doubts about myself, even when I got angry about myself for moving too slowly or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how you starting this running journey, really, it sounds like in 2011, and starting your blog, Fat Girl Running, at the same time, and putting your journey out there and sharing the highs and the lows and really owning, I think, who you are and unapologetically, I should say, owning who you are and your truth and your joy and your love for running. I think it's amazing how in the last 7, almost probably 8 years, it has really just led you to this point. And like you said, not everyone has that community, but I think when we start to be more vulnerable and put ourselves out there and share who we are in our journeys, I think those communities start to form. And so when you started Fat Girl Running in 2011, did you have any idea that this would be the result?
Absolutely not. I was just sharing.
Yeah.
And, because people were interested, and, my family and my circle of friends were interested in what I was doing, because I would post all the time on Facebook. I was a very frequent poster on Facebook, as I am now. And, I'd say, oh, I did a 5K today. I ran 10 miles for the first time in my life today. Or I used to do these crazy events like that I would make up myself. And then somehow get other people to do it with me. I would say today is going to be a marathon exercise day. We're going to do 26 miles worth of exercise. And so we would just do the elliptical, do the treadmill, do the rowing machine, do weights, do a class, swim, and we do it all day, and feel really great about it, and then not be able to move the next day. But I would do that, and people started becoming interested in what I was doing, and so one of my colleagues from one of the schools that I worked at in New Jersey said, "Hey, why don't you just start a blog where you can write about this and like give us some more details? And you're a writer anyway, so you should be writing." And I didn't really know how to do a blog or really what a blog was. I mean, I read them, but I didn't really know what they were in essence. And so so she showed me how to do it, and because she had her own blog, and I said, "Oh, this is cool. Like I could write my own stuff, design my own whatever, not have to answer to any editor or have, editors who think that they're writers, edit my stuff." Mm-hmm. Not that had happened before. And so I would do that. And then, little by little, I gained a little audience, and it wasn't anything really, it was just a small blog audience, and that sometimes would share my posts. But I had this one post in 2014, actually, that I wouldn't say in today's terms, I wouldn't say it went viral, but it definitely got shared a lot. And it was this angry post about what people say to me as a larger woman when I'm out running. And it was all sort of my hindsight reactions.
Yeah.
And so that sort of caught a lot of attention. And then because of that blog post, I started writing for trailandultrarunning.com. I started doing reviews. And so I started building up a little portfolio of writing about running in addition to my own blog. And then in 2015 is when the blog got noticed by Wall Street Journal. And, and so that started the ball rolling. It was this one blog post in 2014 that I did. I got noticed by a bunch of people. In 2015, I was contacted by WSJ. And so, and it, I never, ever expected any real attention. I was just sharing stories, and, sometimes they were funny. Sometimes they were angry. Yeah. Sometimes they were just, race reports. And, and I look back on the blog post, the writing isn't very good. I mean, it's all right, but because I didn't really edit myself. I didn't, but that's what got everything started. And I mean, I kind of knew that just by virtue of being on Facebook, that people felt or saw my posts and would say, "Oh, well, if Mirna is going out and doing 3 miles, I think I can at least try a mile, or I can go out with her and try to run or walk or whatever. I can go to the gym with her." And that's how it started. And I think that's essentially what this all is. People will either see me or read about me and say, "Wow, well, if she can go out there and run an ultra marathon, I can try to start some kind of fitness, something or other," because, and that's what it is. Mm-hmm. I go out and I show myself. I am vulnerable. I've failed in public many times. Yeah. And that's not fun. It's not fun at all. No. But it's never easy to fail. And it's always disappointing for me, but I get over it really quickly because there's always something else that I'm looking forward to. But I'm so happy to be able to show that to people, because people get stopped in their tracks because of failure. They get stopped in their tracks because of fear, like we talked about before. And if I can show them that you can have this fear and you can fail, but you can still keep living, you can still keep trying things, even if they're hard, even if without a doubt that you are going to fail. But there's something learned in that journey. There's something that you can, that you will find out about yourself. There's something new that you will find out about your heart, about your spirit, about your determination, even if you're going to fail, even if there is that possibility of failure. And it starts in childhood, like it really depends on how you grew up and how you dealt with failure as a child, and how your community reacted when you had failed. All that stuff comes up in adulthood.
Oh, it does.
And I think that the more that I, live my life publicly, and sometimes that's hard, because sometimes I just want to go to a race and just run it and not have to talk to people.
Totally. Yeah.
But, the more that I can do that and show people that, when you can do really awesome, crazy, hard stuff in the body that you have. It may not be an ultramarathon. It might be CrossFit. It might be, I don't know, rowing 3 miles. Whatever it is, you can at least start. You can at least try. And some people will not even try because of this fear of failure or this fear of what other people are going to say to you or think about you. And for me, I have the blessing that I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people don't live their lives that way. And that's hard to deal with. But you know what? You can practice. You can practice not caring about what people think.
Yeah.
And practice your comebacks. When people say ignorant things to you or give you a questionable look.
Yeah. What you shared about when you were out running and the things that people would say to you. And I'm sure there are still people that have pretty yucky, nasty, gross things to say, because when you start to live your life more publicly and put yourself out there and be more vulnerable, it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, you're really inspiring people to stretch outside of their comfort zones. And I really think, it's in some ways it's giving people the courage and sort of like that push and that motivation and that sort of like, yes, you can do this. And then on the other hand, it opens you up for, I guess, criticism and judgment and negative comments. And we all have that, whether you're in the public eye or not. But I think it adds an extra layer to it. And I love that you said you just don't care, because one of the questions I had in mind as you were talking, which was the question I was thinking about was, well, how do you deal with that? What do? Do you just put it in a box and say that's their kind of stuff coming out and has nothing to do with me? But it sounds like that's kind of what you do. And then also just this mindset and frame of, I just don't care. I'm doing what I want to do and what I love to do. And I'm not going to let, their negative BS, sort of get to me.
Right. I mean, sometimes it does get to me. I do have a reaction when people say negative things.
Yeah.
But more and more, I have the ability to just wash it off me. If people are writing things that sort of involve my reputation, I will respond because it's my reputation is at stake. And if people have erroneous information about me, which is very, very common.
Yeah.
Makeups, they have this narrative in their head. These are people who are journalists, have just wrong information. And so like that stuff is correct. But, and to make sure that people are, are not making things up or just sticking to this narrative that they have about me, that they think, is my life, I have to make sure that I confront that. But, and I do have a physiological reaction when I something negative, and I try not to. I don't read comments anymore. I just don't. I don't read comments. If somebody puts up the REI video that I was in, if somebody puts up an article that they've seen about me, very often, most of the time, the comments are very positive and very encouraging and warm. But sometimes people who aren't even trolls will, they'll get in, they'll say something really negative, or she doesn't look like a runner. Just on a recent Merrill ad that I was in, and Merrill is one of the companies that I collaborate with, and they've been my biggest supporter since all of this happened. All of the stuff, the good stuff happened.
Yeah.
And we did this whole photo shoot. It was 3 days long, and it was really amazing. Visuals came out of it, and so they put it up on their website a couple of days ago. Somebody wrote, "Well, she doesn't look like a runner. How is this even possible? How is it even possible for somebody that looks like her to run 50K? Shouldn't she be thinner? I mean, like, is this even realistic?"
Wow.
And I just happened to be. I wasn't even looking for comments. I just saw the ad because it came up in my own feed as a sponsored ad, and I was like, wow, obviously I've been thinking about it because I brought it up.
Yeah.
So I do. It does affect me, but on the other hand, okay. So, and this woman says she's a pharmacist, whatever, and so. It's funny. So I'm like, I always have to remind myself that people are dealing with their own very limited perspectives of who an athlete is, who an athlete can be, what an athlete can look like, and what athleticism is. Everybody's dealing with their own thing. And if something is particularly negative or hurtful or shaming, I have to remind myself that those people are dealing with their own darkness. That is not my darkness. I can choose to take that darkness into my own world, or I can choose to just let them deal with their own thing. So the latter is what I choose usually. Just, let them deal with their darkness and their own, whatever thing is going on in their life or whatever is not going on in their lives. That's their issue, not mine.
I mean, mic drop. Because I think that's perfect and beautiful. It's their darkness and you don't have to take it on as your own. And I think kind of creating that bubble or that space around ourselves where we know who we are, we know our self-worth, we know what we love, and we don't have to take somebody else's stuff on. That for me has been like a lifelong journey. And so it's so wonderful to hear how, yes, there are highs and lows within that for you as well, but you've recognized that and you know that for yourself. And I think it's so important and so crucial. And I love how that has really been part of your journey to kind of make that wall or that separation for yourself.
And it's again, it's something, it's practiced. I do take things personally.
Yeah, we all do, right?
Have to, yeah, right. You have to know when something has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, but it's easy when people don't know you. People don't know who you are. You don't have a real human interaction with them. People don't know you. Oh, okay. Well, they know nothing about me. They don't know my life. They're just lashing out at something. Yeah. It's one because they need to, or they feel like they need to. That has nothing to do with me. So it's easier. It's easier in that perspective. But a lot of people deal with people like coming at them over and over again, and that the trolling, and it can be trolling in real life, it can be trolling online, and I have received some of that, and that's what the REI documentary was about.
Yeah.
Again, that it turned into something really positive. Yeah. And I'll talk about it a little bit. So I was doing a 12-hour race, and my goal was to finish 50K at this particular race. And it was in 2017 in May. And the filmmaker, Sarah Menzies, happened to be there because she was filming me for an REI campaign, the Force of Nature campaign. And it was supposed to be about this Black woman in the woods, because that's a story. And so that's exactly what she was doing. This was our first time being together, as she was filming me. She was shooting me from different points in the race and interviewing me. It was really cool. And the race wasn't very difficult, but it was really cold and icy out and windy. But she got some great shots. And 3 miles or 2.5 miles from the end, I opened up my phone because it buzzed, got a notification. And also, I opened up my phone because I wanted to take a selfie of me and my friends. My friends decided to join me for the last loop. And we were walking, and we're going to take it easy, but we're going to finish. But then as I picked up my phone, it buzzed. There was a notification in my email. And then it was an email titled, the subject line was running. And it was in my work email. So I opened up the email, and it was this awful email that started with, "You are a fraud."
Wow.
And how interesting, because I was doing the thing that he said I wasn't doing, or that I didn't do, that, or that I pretended to do. And that was the biggest hit, the biggest, most pointed attack at me. And so there were lots of other things in that email that, if your listeners are interested, they can go on the REI co-op website and see the video. It's called REI Presents the Mirnavator. And anyway, so that negativity, it was awful. I'm in the middle of a race, at the end of a race. And I'm, when you're the most vulnerable, you're in the most pain, you're tired, like everything is out in you. All of your emotions are out in the open.
Pretty much the worst time to read this email. Yeah.
And God, did I suffer a blow? But again, I had this community of friends around me that said, "Hey, whoa, oh my God, I don't believe that. What a jerk." Wait, they said some other choice things. And, F that guy. Yeah. And they said, "Mirna, you are doing the thing that he says you're not doing. You're actually in it right now. Put your phone away." But before I did that, I was like, "Well, I'm going to screenshot it and share it."
Yeah.
And it turned out, that was a horrible moment to read that while I'm at my most vulnerable. But I had my community. I had my Instagram and Facebook community because I screenshot it. And what do you know? Just a couple minutes later, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages are coming at me. All of them positive, except for one on my Facebook.
There's always one. There's always one
who claims they're a doctor. But yeah, and so I get to the end, and hundreds of messages are pouring in, and there's just like entire community of people who I don't know saying, you are doing it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's probably in his basement, or whatever people say about trolls.
Yeah.
I hate when they say, "Oh, he's probably in his mom's basement," but
right. We don't know, but still.
Talking like horribly about moms. But anyway, so again, the community came together, uplifted me so much. And, eventually, like when I processed this whole thing, I wrote about it for Women's Running Magazine. And, and that was eventually what the REI film was about, because I guess they saw something really powerful in that story that I finished anyway, despite horrible troll reaching out to me at my work email.
That's so nuts to me. Yeah, which means he really looked for you.
He was doing some digging. And so, and it turned into this film that went viral. Millions and millions of views.
Yeah.
And that, my life was already crazy. My life was already nuts. I had a publicist for 3 years. And the media requests were still coming in, and I still had these awesome opportunities, but that really that rocked the boat. And that really was the tipping point. I don't even know if you can call it a tipping point. If there's something like more dramatic and epic, but that was it.
The volcano erupted, like that was the moment.
Yeah, like Mount Etna.
That's amazing, because I think one of the first things that I ever saw about you was that REI documentary, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes. So if anyone hasn't seen it, they can look for it. But I think it just goes to show, of course, like looking at that message mid-race was probably not the best thing for yourself in that moment. But I think being open about the fact that these are things you look at and you check, and you weren't even looking for it, but this guy was looking for you essentially. I think it just goes to show you're real and you're vulnerable in the moment. And it kind of brings me back kind of full circle to just really who you are at your core, which is this really kind, vulnerable woman who is really on a mission to do what she loves, which just so happens to be these really long distance runs, because, it brings you so much joy. And you're really, I think, spreading these messages of body positivity and empowerment and self-love and everything that we've sort of touched on, throughout our conversation. And for me, that kind of feels like you've obviously unapologetically in some ways have owned who you are and owned your truth and owned your joy in that way. And we've really touched on, obviously, what that journey, I think, has been like throughout this conversation. But where do you sort of see this journey going for you moving forward, and just continuing to put yourself out there and put those messages out there and continue to spread them?
Well, thank you for saying all that.
That's true. I think it's one of those things where you probably accidentally, became a role model. Like you probably had no intentions of putting yourself in that position, but you sort of are, for better or for worse, and what all of that means. But I think it's really the truth, of who you are.
Well, thank you again. Well, I see myself, this is so funny because as I said in the beginning, I did leave my teaching career of 18 years, which was huge. It was a huge step into the abyss.
Totally. Talk about leaving your comfort zone.
And, my job was really challenging. I was the director of equity and inclusion at my school, which is essentially the director of diversity at a school in the South, in the deep South. Yeah. And I loved the school. I loved my job. I loved my colleagues, and I loved my students. I also taught Spanish and music at different points. And the job offered, I never knew what the days were going to look like, because it was always different. It was always wonderful and really extremely emotionally challenging sometimes, because I'm dealing with very, very tough subjects, things about culture and stuff like that. And so yes, what I'm doing now, as a full-time hustler is equally challenging, in that I'm constantly putting myself out there for the public to see, like for the world to see. And that's hard to do that on a daily basis. But it's exciting. But I do get to teach in a sense. I get to demonstrate to people that there is more to athleticism than skinny bodies. And if you have a skinny body, that is great. That's totally fine. Humans come in all shapes and sizes. But I'm here to show that there is more to that. There's more to athleticism than just what one body represents. And so, there's more to other things too. And I talk about diversity in athletics, I can't say this word, specifically in the outdoor industry. There's more to running than just running a 4-minute mile or a sub 4-minute mile. And that's great. Those are all great achievements for humans. But, we have to also acknowledge what other humans can do too. So, that's the essence of my journey, my message, and what I'll be continuing to do in the future. I'll speak about it. I'll write about it. I will continue to write about my own adventures. I am a National Geographic Adventurer of the Year. So I incorporate that into everything that I do. And I also want to make adventure accessible to people who think it's not accessible to them. So whatever that means, if it means doing more events, if it means, taking people on adventures, if it means doing adventure myself, that's what I'm going to do.
I love this. You are, because you're not just an ultra marathoner, ultra runner, you're an author, you're a writer, you're an opera singer. You have so many things that you love and that you're interested in. And I love this component of adventure and just really seeing where your adventure goes. And, I think we talked about this obviously throughout our entire conversation, but this component of body positivity and self-image and self-empowerment. And have you always been in a space of body positivity? And I guess, I don't know, what some people would consider a healthy self-image, because I think it goes back to the earlier part of our conversation, which was really about just the negative comments that people have. And then those negative comments can become the negative comments that we kind of spew, in our minds too. And so have you always been in that good, healthy space within yourself too? Yeah,
I've had the fortune of growing up in a family. We didn't call it body positivity. We didn't call it healthy self-image. We just, people had different bodies and that was accepted. And so nobody ever said anything disparaging about other people's bodies. Yeah. And so, that was the space that I grew up in. And that was a culture that I grew up in, which is definitely true for a lot of African-American and Hispanic families in the United States. So it's changing a bit now, but, back in the 80s and 90s, that's kind of, we appreciated our bodies for what they were, for the curves we had. And that's another word that's thrown around a lot, curves. And we were appreciated and loved. And so that's how I grew up. And so that is, an essential part of my own personal fabric. So, of course I have my moments. Yeah. Sometimes I wish, my stomach was a little smaller or whatever, but then I'm like, whatever, this body can take me across 120 miles in the mountains. So thank you, stomach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do sometimes have to talk to myself. I have to, I'm never really in a space where I hate my body. I've never, ever been in that space, but, I understand that people are. Totally. And so if I can, empathize with them, if I can show them that, your body is incredible. The human body is a really, really incredible machine. If you learn that, if you're constantly out testing your body and doing great things with your body, you appreciate it more and you hate it less. And again, I don't have any hate, or I've never had any hate for my body, but it would make sense to me that if people got out there and did stuff that challenged them and tested them and showed them and demonstrated to them that their bodies were extremely capable and amazing instruments of the universe, that they would think differently about their bodies. They would see themselves differently.
Yeah, you start to foster a different level of appreciation and kindness, I think, towards yourself when you start to really see and understand, firsthand what your body is capable of doing and where it can take you. So kind of moving forward, future tripping just a little bit. how do you think we kind of continue to create a space for people to unapologetically be who they are and stand in their joy and their passions? And what do you think we need to continue to do as a society to kind of continue to foster that space for people?
I think there are a bunch of things that we need to continue doing. I think one of the most important things is in media and in all kinds of media is to keep representing all different types of communities, whether it's a matter of size, color, ethnicity, whatever it is, keep representing those communities and spaces that have formerly been reserved for a certain look or a certain type of person or a certain demographic. That helps companies with their bottom lines. And it also helps the world. And it makes people feel wanted and needed and respected because they are represented. And when you see yourself represented in something that formerly you thought was for a particular type of person, maybe you are a plus size person, but you never thought that you could go run on mountains. And then you see somebody like me or LaToya Snell or somebody doing that. It becomes possible, it becomes a reality. It gets on your radar screen. Yeah. So when media engages in that, because we're constantly bombarded with media every hour of our day. And so that's a really easy way to continue this momentum of body love, body respect, body positivity, of diversity and everything, and also like in our daily interactions with people, changing the way we speak about ourselves, changing the way we speak about others, and not just their bodies, yeah. People out of our own communities, just really watching and being very aware of the impact of our words. We can have good intentions, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the impact that we have with our words and our actions, and being very aware of that. And a lot of people call that, oh, well, that's being politically correct. No, that's just not being an asshole. So,
Amen.
And
Amen.
Some people want to give that up. They don't want to give it up. Being aware, being sensitive to other people is being human. So I think, we are in a really important space right now, in space and time, where we really have to go back to like just being human and being aware of others and inviting them into our circles and being very intentional about what we say and realizing the impact of what we say and do, and just being loving, and that sounds really woo woo, but you have to love yourself, obviously. And when you love yourself, it's easier to love other people. So yeah. I think that's a really important thing that we have to be worrying about these days. I
could not agree more. So moving forward, what goals are you working towards? Do you have a race coming up that you're going to start to train for? Or what's on the horizon for you? Do you have another book? I mean, what's going on in the life of Mirna, the Mirnavator?
Working on ideas for my second book. I'm actually formulating my race schedule for next year, and my intention is to do a big event every month. I've got a couple of retreats coming up. I have these retreats called Slow AF Trail Running Adventures.
That's amazing.
Retreats. And my first one sold out in 4 days. So I'm working on that and just, again, creating spaces for people to feel loved, to feel wanted, to feel respected. And my retreats are for women now, but I'll probably expand into being gender inclusive and all gender inclusive. And I just want to create spaces where people feel like they can run slow and it's okay. No one's going to berate them for that, where they can come and meet other people who love the outdoors, who love running, but just like don't have 5-minute miles or even 10-minute miles, and no one makes fun of them. No one leaves them. No one, does their run and just leaves them out on the trail by themselves, because that happens all the time. So that's what I'll be doing. I have one coming up in Scottsdale, one in the Azores in Portugal, and hopefully other places. And I'll be learning some other things. I'm doing a retreat in January where I'm going to be learning how to surf.
Oh my God, how cool.
So that's, and I will still keep pushing my own envelope. I really want to work on my rock climbing skills, which are non-existent right now. I want to learn how to mountain bike. I've started that this summer, but I want to, I'm going to get better at those things. I want to try new things. I want to do some stand-up paddleboarding. I want to get better at kayaking, in addition to just continuing to train for my own races. Yeah. I'm going to do Rockies again next year. year. I'm going to do another stage race. I want to start thinking about 100-miler, maybe not next year, but the year after that, says my coach. And, when I continue to travel, but I also want to bring people along with me. As I said, make travel and adventure accessible to people who think it's not. So, hopefully I can partner up with some companies and really make that happen. So
amazing. Okay, last question before we go, because this is the question I ask everybody who comes on Seek the Joy podcast. Well, before I even get to that question, you have an amazing couple of years ahead. I love that you're already thinking so much about it. And so it really does tie into my next question, which is, what is your biggest dream?
Oh God, I haven't even thought about that. Everything that's happening in my life, I never, ever even dreamed of, because it was just none of the stuff was on my radar, because I guess I don't know what I don't know. I don't know. My goodness. I do want to. One of the things that I want to do, there are a couple of things I want to do. I want to do the Annapurna circuit. I want to trek to Everest Base Camp. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Those are like the three big things. And they're probably bigger things, bigger adventures. But those are the three big things that I have, kind of swimming around in my head right now.
I love this. And I can't wait to follow you on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else to see these adventures take place and see you sort of take flight, within those adventures. And I have really loved having this conversation with you, and I'm so glad we connected, and I'm so grateful that you came on Seek the Joy podcast. Where can everyone find you and follow along and really learn more about, who you are and everything that you're doing?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been a great conversation. And it's easy, it's easy to talk to you. It's not always easy to talk.
That is a huge compliment. You don't even know, so I appreciate it.
So I'm on Instagram as the Mirnavator, also on Twitter as the Mirnavator, and I'm not very active on Twitter, but I'm on there, and I have a little following there. And I'm on Facebook as Mirna Valerio - the Mirnavator, or Fat Girl Running, one word. And then I have a group on Facebook called Fat Girl Running, also one word, all caps, where any woman or female identified person can join. You don't have to be fat or curvy or chubby or whatever word you use to describe yourself to join, but it is a weight loss and diet free zone. So we talk only about athleticism and what we're doing and the cool races that we're doing, the experiences that we have. And so, and we're at about 8,000 members. And we just started in April.
That's amazing.
And it's very strict. We have a very strict community code. And people appreciate that because it really is about celebrating athleticism. So that's one other thing. And then you can literally just Google me. And probably the two things that are going to come up are the REI video and the article about me in Runner's World. Those will probably be the first two things that come up.
Perfect. Incredible. I'm putting everything in the show notes so everyone can find you, and it'll be super easy. And this was so much fun. This was a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much again for coming on Seek the Joy podcast.
Thank you again.
Seek the Joy podcast is a production of Seek the Joy Media and created, produced, and hosted by me, Sydney Weiss. You can tune into all of our episodes on your favorite podcast platform, and if you're enjoying the show, hit follow and leave us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure to join the community, join the conversation on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere, and don't forget, you can actually watch today's new episode and all of our episodes on our brand new YouTube channel. Click that link in the show notes to subscribe and tune in. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you right back here next week for another Seek the Joy Tuesday.